First, I'm going to run through a very quick recap of the two webinars that we've done so far, just for those who weren't able to come to one of those two. And there's a little item I forgot when presenting those that I'm going to make sure I don't forget today. Then we're going to jump into the reporting upgrades that have come with UniPhi 21. And included in that is some really large enhancements around templates, but also some enhancements around the embedded dashboards, that are UniPhi embedded dashboards. So there's 4 reporting platforms in UniPhi, and I'm going to cover all 4. Yeah, just in the context that we're going to build up to a crescendo around templates that I'm sure hopefully will get everyone excited and run away and start upgrading to 21 to start building their templates. All right, but first, as I mentioned, a bit of a recap. The first webinar we did on UniPhi 21 was on our new AI summarizer capability. And for those who weren't able to get to that, just as a refresher there, I'm in a UniPhi application. I'm sharing my screen. Please yell now if you can't see it. And what you're able to do now is, and the goal, with our issues management platform, is to be able to get people collaborating around all types of issues on projects and all types of projects. It doesn't really matter. And we certainly use that extensively in our business. And if you look at the webinar that I ran the other week, this then drives even more AI subsequent to this, but you need to get the data in the system first. So here I am in an issues list for all projects. And then I've got the top issue there. And a new button is available as part of the UniPhi 21 release, which is this little starry AI button. People who've used AI in other applications would have seen that it's similar type thing. So the change management is quite simple. And I clicked this last week for the webinar, and it summarized the information that's below. So the comments and the actions get summarized. Now in our application, you can get 50 to 100 comments against an issue, and it can become quite challenging to get your head around it. And in using this summarizing tool, it's been quite effective in doing that. Equally, when creating documents, so when I get to the end of this session, I'm going to create a progress report that's going to be quite substantial. I'll give you a sneak peek of it now. If I click this construction phase PCG, you can see that there's a lot of content in here, some text, some numbers, some actions, some photos. And at the top, again, you'll see the issue summarizer icon, and you can click that and it'll summarize everything in there, give you your executive summary, essentially, that's in that document. So that's all part of UniPhi 21. Now, what I keep forgetting to advise people is that doesn't come free. The technology we're using integrates our application and our querying with the ChatGPT 4 API. And the people at OpenAI want to get paid for that. And so when you go into configuration, you can decide, and again, there's some data sovereignty things as well, and some other work you'll have to talk to the boffins about with regards to whether you want to implement this within your organization. You can configure it to be available or not. It'll be available if you've got a number in this summary limit here. So current monthly AI summary usage is 0 out of 200. Last month I had 2 tokens used, and in July I had 6. You will be charged for those at $2 a token. So $12 and $4, that would be the invoice for those 2 months. And you can limit so that you're not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, how many tokens you're allowed by setting that number there. Set it to 0 and the application will hide the button. It won't even be available. So that was the bit I kept forgetting. And that's how you control AI usage. Now, the other bit that we talked about last week is the new schedule phasing screen. I won't go into that one yet because I'm actually going to use that as part of the reporting presentation today, later in the demo. So far on the UniPhi 21 journey, we've covered AI, where we're taking it and what you can use in 21 for AI, and new capability to distribute effort over time, and hopefully get project managers in there managing that. And I'm going to show you how the project manager can view their performance on that today in the demonstration. All right, so that's the recap done. Now we're going to head into this week's session. And for those who have just recently joined while I was saying all of that, please feel free to chat in the chat function of Zoom, or unmute yourself and ask a question as I go through. I'm quite happy to stop and pause and respond to queries as they come up. Okay, so as I mentioned at the start of this webinar, there's actually 4 reporting platforms in UniPhi, and they all have a different purpose, which is why we created them, to try and get all the different ways that people need to be able to access the data that they've diligently gone and put into the system. The first reporting platform that I'm going to look at is our Power BI embedded dashboards. So if you have a Power BI embedded dashboard, you will have a dashboard menu over here. If you don't have that menu, then means you don't have any Power BI reports. Now, the good thing about the Power BI embedded integration is that you're able to get far broader type visual reports built that are very bespoke to your requirements. And so this is the reason we integrated with this nearly 10 years ago now. So that's great. And in a moment, I'm going to show you that it's a sort of no-code approach that you can take to building one of these things. However, it quite quickly becomes, if your requirements are more complicated, a requirement for coding. And so therefore, you quickly get to the limits of where you need to engage with someone who has that capability. But it is something you can build out. It's a Power BI coding capability. It's not a UniPhi coding capability. So a lot of people have that capability. Power BI has exploded. So hopefully there are people with that knowledge in your business, or you can outsource, or you can engage us to build these reports for you. Now, there's a few limitations around this. So the way this works, similar to the OpenAI ChatGPT thing I just showed you, we're using Power BI's platform. And what happens is we publish a file that was created, a report that was created in what's called Power BI Desktop, to our Power BI workspace in the cloud. And it's pulling the data out of UniPhi using our REST API into its own data environment. So again, there's a bit of data sovereignty there, but I can confirm for any government people that we're using Australian-based Power BI for Australian-based clients. And so it is still housed territorially within Australia. But because it has to do that, it's quite slow. It has to take all that data out of UniPhi and put it into it. Plus, when we do that, it puts a strain on the server that Microsoft is using to generate the Power BI reports. And just like ChatGPT, Microsoft wants to get paid for that service. And because it's Microsoft, they want to get paid a lot. So the way we do it is you get a refresh of this data on the hour. So if someone changed the budget on this report here, the Coles Bayside indicative value T1 became $80,000, you wouldn't know that until the refresh completed. So you can see down here, this one hasn't actually been done for a while because it's a presentation database and we don't bother refreshing it. But you would have a refresh time here that would be midday if you're on the east coast of Australia. And then you would have to wait until 1 p.m. for that data to refresh. If you were, and that's free, we give you that for free because we're very generous, unlike the other software providers, and you get to consume this wonderful information and report on it. You can export it to PowerPoint or to PDF and present that to people who don't have access, but I'll also show you how you can get access to that report from external providers logging in and consuming on demand in a minute. The other thing you can do if you really want to have this refresh on an ad hoc basis is you can have access to this manual refresh button. So when you click that, it runs away. It still takes a little while, 5 minutes, let's say, and then the refresh time will update. And it'll pull all the data into this report, and the report, not just this report, but any report that you've got across the platform, and it's now updated. Now, that puts further load on the server and therefore increases the charges. So we do charge for that. There's a fee of $500 Australian dollars a month to have that refresh button. So if you're eager and want to get your reports, Power BI reports refreshed instantly or whenever you want them to, that's what that fee is for. Now, you can get this type of feedback instantly by looking at the other dashboards, the embedded UniPhi dashboards that I'm going to show you in a minute. And that's why we built them, is that they're live and they're more oriented to the person managing projects or the internal users who are program managers, portfolio senior staff who want to consume this within the system, whereas this Power BI is more of a sort of external stakeholder or people who don't have access to UniPhi or only use it on an ad hoc basis. Now, in my opinion, it's better to try and get people to access this report here because there's some interactive benefits. Plus, if you rendered a PDF and PowerPoint, you will cut off this information that is viewed within sliders. So it becomes quite challenging to get the report to be exactly how you want in PowerPoint. What you can do is if you go into the hamburger here and we go to apps and I go to Power BI embedded, you can configure these workspaces to be accessible by certain clients. And so if I wanted this PCG report, for example, which is what we're going to focus on, to be accessible to a specific client, I could give them they need a UniPhi license, so you'd have to pay $10 a month for that person, but you give them the lowest license you need. That means they can only see projects that they're on, so the client can see projects that they're on. They can't see the cost and contracts module. They can see issues and documents. And you would just select ABC construction or whatever the client is. Now, all of the internal users, the ones with organizations flagged as internal, will still get that dashboard, but that's opened it up. Now, if you had other clients, you would just duplicate the dashboard for other clients and limit it to that client. And then you can engage with that client and give them as a value add and say, hey, you can log into my funky portfolio and project management application that I use to make sure I deliver a great service to you. And you can consume your report on demand by going to the dashboard. And if you did that PCG one, they'd be able to consume just their projects one at a time for this particular report by selecting a different project one at a time and having that report displayed in that particular screen. So probably a worthwhile endeavor. Now, what we're pitching for this stuff is to say, you know, we're trying to be as no code as we can possibly be, and it's not that bad. You can actually get somewhere. So this is Power BI Desktop. This has what they call a semantic model of UniPhi's API already in it, and you can get that from us as a template. We're looking at having this as a published template, so you don't need to have separate files with this in it. You just connect to it on the cloud. That's a future endeavor. But anyway, they're already connected there. And so I can go into this new page, and without any coding knowledge at all, I can, but a little bit of knowledge about how UniPhi works, I can go, okay, I want to do something with this data. I want to look at my account codes. So everyone knows who's used UniPhi that we have a chart of accounts, and that chart of accounts is made up of account codes. And I'm just going to click that. Now, in this particular file, it's already been sorted for one particular chart of accounts called post-contract, which is what the development systems, one of its chart of accounts is called. So these are all the other ones that are in the list, and we're just looking at post-contract. So that's going to be filtered on all pages. So this list is just the post-contract codes. I'm going to drag that down here. And then I'm going to say, okay, I want to know the budget. And so you can go on budget and it'll say budget, and I tick on that. And that's got by code the budget that's in the system. Now, this budget endpoint is the current budget as opposed to a snapshotted budget. You would need to bring in the snapshotted budget endpoint to do that. So this is just the current budget. So you need to know that concept in UniPhi about how we snapshot and we present budgets for approval and all that sort of stuff. But this is the one that's viewed in the current. And then what I can do is I can say, okay, I want to do that for a visual, right? So, and I just want to look at a couple of accounts. So I can click on this little filter thing here and go, show me the architect, authority charges, and let's say FF&E consultant, right? So now I've got 3, and I click my little column chart here, and I've now got a column chart that shows me those numbers, but it's all the total for the entire portfolio. So I go, I want to see it by project. So I come down to the project one, and I drag that into the legend. I make it a bit bigger. And I've now got a basic benchmarking of those costs across different projects. And I can say, oh, that the most architect I've ever spent is on the Gippsland Regional Aquatic Centre. And so within 2 minutes, 3 minutes actually, because I looked at the clock when I started to do that, I've got a benchmarking report that is a visual out of Power BI without doing any DAX, they call it. It's the programming language coding. It doesn't take long before that is required, and you'll see here that if I go in back up to budget at the top, there are these little calculators here. These are calculated measures, and they're doing formulas to do other funky stuff. But you know, it's something worth experimenting with, and the system's available, the data's there. You can build your own reports. Once you're happy with it, what happens is you send it to us, and we publish it. So I'm just going to get rid of this Zoom thing. It's in my road. You got that publish button. We click that and we publish it into our workspace, and then it becomes available into that dashboard that I was showing you earlier within here. I'll move this back again. So that's how Power BI works. That's the sort of process of it, and what you can do with it. And if you look at the subnav here, and this is just for construction, we've got hundreds of these different types of dashboards that we've built for clients for different types of purposes. And because UniPhi is so broad and has so much functionality, you can really build whatever you like into this platform and publish it and consume that information as you see fit. All right, so the next one we're going into is the UniPhi embedded dashboards. Now, the benefit of the UniPhi embedded dashboards, if I just close that down, is the fact that it's giving you instant feedback. And so here I am at the portfolio summary screen, and this is a dashboard combined of visuals and tables, where we've got dates and NPV/IRR reports and other things in here. Now, these have become more and more and more flexible, and UniPhi 21 does have new features around this stuff. These icons here enable you to create multiple views and then decide what is in those views. So if I was to change this to project detail, I get completely different charts and a different set of columns and descriptions and things like that. Any user can do that, not just a system admin. So if I was to click this icon here, this one means add view. It'll say, I'm a system admin person. So it'll say, do I want to make this a system default view that everyone gets or just something for myself? I name it and then I start to build it. When I start to build it, what I'll be doing is adding columns and adding charts. So if I click this, it'll be my column remover. It'll already show what I've ticked so far, and I can select different options here and add them in. So if I've got a lot of custom fields, which this system certainly does have, I can have those as columns. And so you can create as many views as you like of this and be able to pivot between those views to see different pieces of data that you've captured within your system within the portfolio summary screen. Now, the instant benefit of that I'll just demonstrate as well. If I was to go into one of my projects, what we're looking at is a cost report here. It has cash flow and it has commitments and budgets, and we're looking at variances to budget. I'm in at level 2, so that level structure is something you need to know about when you go to do your Power BI, you know, we were just showing before. But if I go and look at it all, so it's everything, I'm going to say, okay, let's go down. We've got this architect here, 488,000. At the moment, there's a possible variation of $4,000. Now, there's a couple of ways I can find out where that is. If I go to the contracts screen, I've got revenue on, so I'll just go all, so I get all my contracts. Chances are it's coming from that architect, right? Because you've labeled it that way, but you might not have labeled it very well or whatever. If you go to the allocation screen, you can look at the coding structure and find out what contracts are coded to it. And then once you find that, you can drill in on that contract. So these are the codes here, lump sum, 100. So I have to go and find the one that says architect. And look, that project manager is actually been coded to architect, which may be incorrect. So you can then recode this by dragging that to the project manager code, which is this one here. So I can just grab that, drag it up to the project manager, and it recodes that. And then here's my architect one with the $4,000 possible. So I'm just going to click that, takes me into the contract. I scroll down to this, and you may have a workflow process that can change the status. It might be locked off here, but if you haven't got that, you can just literally change it. And again, the benefit of the reporting is if I go back to the cost module, that 4,000 now on the architect line has moved out of that possible variation and instantly into the approved variation. So we're getting that instant feedback. You don't have to worry about some Microsoft refresh on the hour business. You can just get that instant view. There's a whole bunch of views here. Again, you can change the charts. You can change it to financial and mixed and analyze the data in a different way. And that's what the embedded dashboards are for. So if I was to, for example, look, this is a separate deployment. I'm now logged in as a project manager, so no longer as an administrator. There's a few little nuances that happen when you're in that role around reporting. You can see here that there's some squares missing on the side here. What that sort of means is that the bulk update option isn't available to you on those particular projects. And the reason that is that you're not actually a project manager on those projects. You're a team member. So when I click a link, this is red, amber, green statusing on here as well, which is reporting. And then when I click a link on that particular project, it takes me into the details of that project. So, and again, this is customizable. There's who the client is and project manager. Now, not every deployment is going to have a role called project manager. So that is configurable as well by the admin, unfortunately. But me as an end user, I can click this and say, what do I want as my highlights? The highlights of this information along here. So we're looking at, priority, current phase, start date, finish date, actual hours, remaining hours. I can put in budget to date hours as well, budget hours. So if I tick those, they become in as highlight points, and that'll expand these to now be on 2 rows. I can add extra charts into this so that you've got all these charts to look at and see if you want to put any of those in, and I just play around with them to see which ones suit. And then lo and behold, I've got myself a detailed report about how this project is performing across the integrated areas of time, cost, risk, resources, functional specifications, you name it. These functional specifications are custom fields, and so they are brought in. In fact, I've forgotten. I think it's in the custom fields section again by admin to define it, or it might even be in here. I thought we brought it into the end people, but it doesn't look like it. So in the custom fields section, it says using detailed screen, and this is the detailed screen. My mind just went blank, but if these are all custom fields, if you go into the custom fields of this project, number of lists, number of car parking spaces, FICA, etc., would have yes to use in the detailed screen. So it dynamically then lays them out based on the grouping of those custom fields that you've set up in the system. So you kind of become quasi software developer in this because you're building your own report interfaces for you to analyze and see. That then extends down. We already covered the cost dashboard, the contract detail. This is where, again, you can create your own graphs, your own views. Views come into it again. So the same functionality, but you can pivot into different views of the information. So this is looking at, and this one's dates, when things are finishing. Now, if I go to the one I was doing last week, which was, I forget, Stadium. Wrong screen. Got to go back into this one. Stadium. And I go to the contract screen. This type of short little reporting with the customizations we've made in 21 just gets extended and extended. So if I drill in on this one, this is the one we were looking at last week. What this is a very busy interface for people to work out both their contracted value, because we've got the copy to contract, and the phasing of these hours over time so that we can get a resource effort profiling for our business and the project itself. Now, that's great, but what you can also do with this new functionality, and I didn't even think about this until I was messing around with it this morning. I actually think I mentioned it as a possible idea on the webinar last week, is just create a new view. I'm going to call this one report, and build a report instead of a busy screen. So in that report, I want to get obviously the task description. I want to get, actually I won't budget hours. I'll just look at actual and remaining hours, which gives me a total hours because actual plus remaining is total. And then variance to contract and the contract hours. That's all I want. Quite simple. Hit save. And now that I've thought of that, I reckon we'll definitely get rid of, we'll increase the options here to 0. So if you have 0 weeks, then you essentially, it's just a report, because this still has the phasing in it, but I only thought about that this morning. So probably hiding this, and you've got your little report here that shows you how you're performing compared to contract, and in this project, absolutely abysmal. And so therefore, that's going to flow through into, costs, which you can view here as well. And you can see that there's a, blowout in cost. And all those other good things that you can get out of a decent report. Now, at the moment, there's a bit of a chart going on there, but we're going to need to expand that and get some more interesting stuff into this. There's no phasing of this information, so that's why it's not being shown there. But, basically being able to build both user input screens and feedback loop screens on these embedded dashboards is a big focus of us. I would expect the number of dashboards and the number of charts you can add to increase exponentially over the next few months and into UniPhi 22. And hopefully you can give us the feedback on what sort of reporting you would like to see in the different parts, because there are embedded dashboards literally everywhere now in the screens that show sometimes some pretty cool stuff if your data's good. If I go all projects here, you get some nice actual versus baseline, and you get some nice capacity type views of the world that can hopefully inform and help you look at recruitment and possible bottlenecks in project activity if the orange line is a lot less than the forecast. Okay, so that's reporting platform number 2. Reporting platform number 3 is very old, but used very heavily still, and it's reporting services. It comes under the hamburger under reporting, and these are tabular style reports. The benefit of them is they enable you to export to Excel. The second benefit of them is that you're able to come to us. You can't build these yourself, but you can come to us with a spec. It gets fully tested, it's robust, you know bang on it's going to get the right number every day. So we have a lot of commercial projects using these program invoicing, program transaction review, program transaction to date reports, estimate at completion reports if you go to profitability, and various other type reports that are really, robust in their outputs, but not the prettiest things you're likely to see. Now, when you look at these reports, one of the reasons people still use them is they can export them to Excel. And so in the timesheets module, whenever you see something Excel, if you run it that's not, the format of it will go to Excel, but it'll merge and you won't be able to filter very easily and pivot table on it very easily. So what we've done is we've created a whole bunch. You'll see in other subnavs, there'll be the word export at the end. And so I'm just going to run this. Screen on the road again. If it's okay with you, I'm going to run it in a different system again. Sorry to jump around, but you'll get to see me go there again. So this is Project Manager. And I'm just going to the project. So project managers have a lot less reports, part of the controls, but they do have timesheet export. This already has the date range that I wanted. So I select Excel, and I click View, and I can then run this Excel report. There it is there. And if I enable editing, I can go to the insert screen and click pivot table. It'll automatically select the table for us. And I can then just quickly create, again, going back to our knowledge of how UniPhi works, a project name and the number of hours. And I've got that. I can bring people into it if I want to. Somewhere here, employee. And so, there's your flexibility. You run a report out, you start to build it. Now, the problem with this is you might create a whole bunch of stuff. You can even chart this and do all that sort of thing. Then next month, you want to update this. You'd have to run the report again, copy paste this information, redo the name range that calls itself the table, and then refresh the pivot table. So instead of doing that methodology and using those reporting services reports, you can also just connect using the same methodology we use in Power BI to connect to our API endpoint. So this is using what's called the Power Query editor to connect to the timesheet endpoint, which is here. And it's the same type of data that we just reported from that report. But the benefit of it is when I've created this pivot table, and it's the same data, same type of information. This time I'll include task description, come down to hours, put that in the values section, and Bob's your uncle. I've got my hours being displayed here. Now, next month, you want that to be updated. You literally just come in here, you go to the data screen, and you click refresh, and you'll see that timesheet data is refreshing from the system. You then have to frustratingly actually refresh the pivot table. So you go to the pivot table section and hit refresh, and that refreshes the pivot table. It doesn't refresh all of the tables, which I found incredibly annoying. But I actually have a 10 tabbed Excel analysis that I have for my own business that's using that methodology, and it's quite handy. You can connect to multiple endpoints and join them up. You can actually create relationships in them and have them refreshing multiple tables. So revenue, for example, and other things like that. If this particular table doesn't have everything you need. And it's good for quick analysis, and then you always get the benefit of Excel. You can do something dodgy on the outside and go, yeah, that, and you get an answer, and all the beautiful reasons Excel still exists. So what we're trying to provide is a lot of different avenues, a lot of different channels to get your data out, to be able to get insights out of it, manage your projects better, manage your portfolios, make better decisions, data-driven decisions that is flexible enough to handle the 17,000 different ways. Like if you looked at the people on this call and the different projects they're running, it's enough to make you get that scanner's moment where your head shakes and it eventually explodes. So individually niche, it's not that bad. You know what you want, you can build it, you can collaborate with your UniPhi support person and get those outcomes. Trying to be a centralized person that gets their head across all of that can be quite challenging. And hence why we're trying to provide as many facilities as we can. Now, the next one is the biggest update of UniPhi 21. And so I'm just going to it's no longer in Excel. And I'm just going to go back to basics. And it's to do with our document system. And so in our template engine, we've been working on this for quite some time. And I don't exaggerate, to be able to generate an integrative progress report from all the information that you've created in the system. So when I go to the documents module, I've got a version of that in here at the moment. And as I was mentioning about the various ways people want to see the data, it's almost limitless. And I know that we're still not 100% there yet, but I do think that we're getting like 80% of the content people need for what we call in construction a PCG. And this will be just as applicable to any other type of project. You'll just tweak it, and you have the no code interface to tweak it. So I'm going to start at the end first, and I'm going to work backwards. This is a signed off construction phase project control group, basically progress report. And when I click it, I get an HTML view of it that shows an executive summary, version history, control, who's edited it and when, some visuals coming through, a bunch of reports, tables, some more visuals, commentary that has what we call template variables that are automatically generating this, so you're not doing transpose errors. And in one PCG report that was created in Microsoft Word, I had 20 different versions of the budget when it was sent to us to create as a report in UniPhi. So that's trying to remove that as a possibility. And then so on and so forth. And you'll see that the controls are quite different. This net position one, it was there before, but it was limited in its functionality. You couldn't just do 2 columns, and you couldn't do just 4 or 5 codes. You couldn't relabel these headings if you want to. You can do all of this stuff now, which you'll see when I go to create it. And so scrolling down, we've got issues, we've got risks, and I'll show you how you can get this to bubble up so you're not having to manually select that. Progress photos, a full appendix, and you can append PDFs into here and it will append them into the report as one report. And so that progress report, if we can get it to 80% complete, you can then render it to PDF, convert, hack, / get that report out, hopefully save you at least a few hours in compiling it from the various sources that you'd be doing it now. So what I wanted to do is firstly create that again. And then as we create it again, you'll see the functionality. And I'm going to create this net reporting one, which has a lot of functionality that we've added to make that enhanced, but also just quickly tweak this template to show you what happens and how you have to manage tweaking it, which is a no code thing, but there's some tricks you need to know about. So we're 35 minutes in, we've got about 15 minutes to go. Hopefully you're hanging in there with me. This is the build up crescendo compartment of this particular presentation. So what I'm going to do, firstly, actually, is go to the cost module and show you one other thing that's come into UniPhi 21. When I'm in a project and say I'm in the budget, we've added the document module and we've added it everywhere. So if you go to issues, it'll be there as well. Integration with the document module. So you can launch a document from any of these modules. And the benefit of doing it from within one of these ones is it's contextual. So when I click this document, I'm in the risk system. The templates it gives me are only ones that have risk related information in them. So it's a much smaller list of templates. which is quite powerful. And thankfully, it has the one I want, which is this construction phase PCG. And I knew that because it had the risk control in it. So that's why I did it. So here we are. We're in this project. We've selected that template. And anyone who's created a UniPhi document before will be familiar with this. But what's changed is just the flexibility around some of this stuff. So this is a project cost summary. This has been upgraded. You could do level filtering before, but that wasn't quite enough. You can now just pick the codes. And so one of the challenges was that we had a client who had contingency at different levels, and they just wanted to show contingency. So if you untick this, you can just tick the contingency lines, even if they're in different parts of the charts of accounts, and you'll just get the contingency. And so that's one example that we've brought into the UniPhi 21, just to make it such a big difference. Equally, we've brought in the ability to add the columns here rather than ticking in the old system. And so you can see there's a whole bunch of columns not being used in this particular section. And so on and so forth, you'll see that functionality come through. This is the old school one, hasn't been upgraded yet. It'll come into a later edition where the ticking was done within the table itself. Now you're using this particular functionality. And so now that I'm at that contingency, this hasn't been set up. So I forgot that I was going to do it at this step. So I quickly didn't do it in the last one and added it in here. So these are the contingency codes. That should have automatically been done in the template, so I didn't have to do it as an end user. And then, you know, I've got this remaining contingency. It's like, yeah, but I want more. I want more. So I click this. And I go, what was the original contingency budget? And what's the variance to it? And I hit save. And so as an end user, I can put more in. I can change the way I describe these things. If I've got a client who wants to be called baseline or I dream of Genie, it doesn't really matter. And you just change the headings here to what you need it to be. So we do that and we click through and we keep going. Now, these charts have a lot of functionality to them as well. So again, what I'm doing here is limiting the chart to the contingency, and I've cash flow profiled the contingency. So it's actually showing how I expect that contingency to be drawn down over time. I then got a little comment section here that I can set up. And at this point in time, I'm only showing the budget. I could show actual forecast, not really relevant on a contingency. So you can see also that I've got portfolio mode here. I can change to being just a monthly figure rather than a curve, or I can show just the curve, or I can show both. So yeah, I can add extra charts into here if I want. And again, that list is going to grow. So definitely well worth exploring on that stuff. This is an executive summary where I can write down anything I like, and you'll see how it had boilerplate text that automatically inserted the numbers based off the template variables. Template variables are these little icons here where you can draw down on chart of account budgets and other information that's stored in the system to dynamically populate text rather than have to look it up and key it in yourself. This is new and exciting, the net position. So a lot of developers coming on board with us now. This enables you to customize. The net budget was there before, but this is now enabling you again to customize what you show on that. So a lot of the time it's like, I actually only want level 1. So now you're getting just total revenue, total cost, and net budget for these two charts of accounts. Now, if I get it to fees out revenue, that's going to be a better one. So you can see now I've got a negative variance there, and I can compare that to the original approved on both of those charts of accounts, post-contract and fees out revenue. So it's cost codes and revenue codes. And I can also then add in, if I want, the variance totals to those as well. So I've just quickly tweaked that report myself as an end user. This is a cool one as well. If I don't like these headers, I just want to label that forecast and budget and variance. And I can then say, that's all I want, get rid of that group header. All right. And you wouldn't believe how many times having that there was enough for people not to use the system. So we're really trying to make it as flexible as we can to get what you need to issue to your budget, even with this bad spelling. So that flexibility around, you know, filtering out specific codes and and all that sort of stuff is new. This is not new, but it's there. And what's new in 21 is, again, the ability to put in extra fields if you want. So this is all time-related stuff. This is contract-related stuff. You get to tick the main works. Again, in the template, you can add extra columns. This is interesting because most people don't realize you can do separate proportion management without creating another contract to manage EOTs. This is, again, a mix. It's brought in the practical completion date dynamically for some text. Now, this is interesting and key to learn, is to use the filtering to escalate what you want to escalate. So this is a issues list. It's only showing issues that have been escalated to PCG. And the same here, but just for quality. And with risks, you can do the same thing, except this time we've labeled it steering committee to confuse people. But you've got a little risk register. Again, you can add in as many columns of your risk system as you want into that report and make it a much bigger table. WHS events is a periodic count of that information by category. So again, you would actually pick WHS, but I didn't have that category here in this dummy data, so that it populates. It's counting how many issues you've logged along the way. And again, you can edit all of this and write your explanatory comments. This is where your site photos come in. We've got a new file upload thing. It enables you to upload files greater than 3 gig now that we've got people doing LiDAR and sharing those files in our system to keep me awake at night. We've upgraded that capability through this interface here. And so it's the same end outcome, but you're using that new functionality in UniPhi 21. That's going to lay out differently to what you see here when you look at the report. This is the full cost detail. But what's interesting about this is it doesn't have expenditure. I kind of put expenditure back at that financial summary, but if I wanted to, I could equally just come down here and go show me the expenditure as well, not just whole of project. And you'll see as well that this is comparing to a previously created construction phase PCG, which enables you to have variances to last forecast coming through from 1 month to the next, which I think is a pretty cool feature. Other variation registers, progress claim registers can be brought in as well. So again, main works contract or all. If you're all, it'll create separate tables for all the different variation registers. Again, what you see can be edited and you can add extra bits in. More visuals. And this is going to be outputted differently. So when you create a template, you can output things differently to the input. The executive summary is at the end because, in my opinion, it's incredibly hard to summarize something you haven't created. So the idea being, as you've been creating all of this, you've been analyzing it and seeing where things are wrong and writing little comments about quality issues or financial issues. And then you come in here and say, and then one last little one. This one is looking at periodic custom fields, and you can track your, in this instance, off-plan sales or any other thing you might want to look at. So how many inspections, how many sold in the month and to date, and comments. And again, you can, there's not much to add in there, but you can add or hide any of that. So that's basically generated in 10 minutes, that same report that I showed you at the beginning. And there it is populated there as an integrated thing. You can see how the executive summary came first, even though we entered it last. Now, as you're doing all of that, you're going to want to tweak it. So in the template system, if I go to the construction phase PCG report and I hit save and edit here, these are all those steps again. So when I get to net position, for example, I can change this to portfolio mode, which again, didn't exist before. And so if you're doing a stage development or you've got a portfolio report that you want to generate out of this based on your aged care developments, you can then set this up, put the filters in, put the columns in that you want to set as a standard, and that becomes the new construction phase PCG report. All the way through, you can tweak and change these. There's just one thing I wanted to say about that. If I go back to the document I created here, it's in private mode, so it's not finalized. If I edit it, I can continue changing and finalizing this document. If I go to net position, it hasn't changed. It hasn't brought in the aged care portfolio filter. For that to happen, I have to actually copy this particular report, because what happens is this report will use the template, the version that it got created on. Because if I went and removed a step in a future version, it would break this document because this document had that step in it. So if you want to upgrade a document without creating it from scratch again, which is probably quicker in this instance, but if you wanted to use the description text, like if you'd written a really long executive summary, but you wanted to bring in a new step or you wanted to remove an existing step, you could just hide the step if you wanted to. But to upgrade it to the latest version of that template, what you do is you copy the template and you do this copy partial, because that then says you're actually going to use the same template name, but it's the new version of that template. And then it says, okay, bring in all the rich text boxes for me, map the steps. So these are just rich text boxes. The other ones are dynamic, right? They're going to pull in the data from the system. So there's no, you're copying that every time you create the document anyway. But in this instance, I'm just pulling in the text that I've spent, all that time creating, but now I just want to upgrade the template version for it. And now when I go to the net position, it's got, I didn't hit save, but it would have had the aged care full blown. But you can see it's not selected fees over revenue, which is what I'd selected before. It's updated. And if I go to the executive summary text, we're still stuffed. Okay, so that's one trick that not many people know about, is that partial copy to inherit a new template. And that's why you have to do it, is so you don't destroy any old documents. They still stay valid, especially signed off ones. But yeah, in the new UniPhi 21 facility, there is a lot of power in the configuration of those reports. We're basically asking for you to break it, and then we'll fix it and say, like, I need it to say have 2 columns that are this type of data that exists in UniPhi, and I need to filter it to a combination of, closed and open issues with fried eggs on a Sunday, and we'll try and do it. But I believe that, there's a fair few project reports out there that could just be completely automated, and somewhere you're going to get 80 to 90% there. And hence, hopefully, generating progress reports becomes a half-an-hour exercise, because you still got to write the commentary and analyze the results. And no longer it takes at least half a day to a day to compile from various Excel, Word, and PowerPoint abominations.